I'm going to do a video on a collection of endgames, which I'm hoping people will find interesting. I've been back into chess for, well, I've just played in my fourth Belper Club Championship. So when the next Club Championship starts, that will be 4 years that I've sort of been back into chess. Definitely 3 years I've been back into it and taking it very seriously as my main hobby. And loads of you will just know already that I've been concentrating my efforts very much on endgames. I think you can learn stuff in endgames much more than openings. If you think about the way you learn an opening, a lot of the time it's sort of quite just rule based. I know that when he plays knight f6, I will play bishop g5, and in this particular line, you need to know that if they try to do this, you can do this, and you're not really sort of building your sort of grasp, your intuitive grasp of chess as a whole. I don't think. Sometimes you are. Sometimes in the opening, sort of like, oh, it's important in this variation, you've got to play rook b1, you've got to take the b file, that was the reason you set the b pawn, blah, blah, blah. And that's an idea that's then true in that opening, and it's an idea you might take elsewhere with you in chess. But that sort of transference of skills doesn't really happen, I don't think, in openings. And I think most chess players spend way too much time on the openings. So I've been spending my time on the endgame. I might be wrong, but that's been my view. So if you're looking to get good at endgames, I would recommend to anyone that you start off with the Book of Jesus. Incredibly good book. And 2 summers ago at Belper Club, we basically I based all the stuff we did on that. But importantly, you want to get the workbook that goes with it. So there's the Book of Jesus workbook that goes with that. Because what I found was that I thought I understood ending 36 or whatever, and actually I didn't. And the workbook highlighted that I was failing to spot. I'd learned how to do a particular endgame, but I was failing to spot, well, you've got it here. And you've also got sort of swapping off a pair of bishops to end up in a rook and pawn versus a rook situation. Like, do you just know that's the Lucena position is one, or that's the Philidor position that's drawn, or something more complicated? So yeah, the idea of moving to an endgame, like once you've got your endgame knowledge, that's pretty important. And then last summer we did this liquidation on the chessboard, messing up my camera angles, getting my left and rights mixed up. I'm all right at chess, just can't do left and right. So Liquidation on the Chessboard by Joel Benjamin. I think that's an extremely good book. We basically spent last summer going through that book. It was all sort of instigated because I played a tournament at Lancaster where, in my view, I did all right in the end game. In fact, some of the end game I got right because of my knowledge of the Book of Jesus. So that was helpful. But there was a bit where I failed to identify that I should have swapped off rooks and gone into the king and pawn endgame because it looked lost to me. But I was wrong. So I've been spending a lot of time on that. So I recommend doing that one as well. But then the main book I've been working on incredibly slowly for a long time now is this one, which you can also see at the top left of this video, Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. Extremely hard. Please don't start on it without having done the Book of Jesus first. You obviously can, but I don't recommend it. And yeah, I say I've been going through it incredibly slowly. Chapter 1 is King and Pawn Endings. I reckon I've read that chapter now 4 or 5 times. And I think it's finally starting to help. I've had a couple of games recently where I've saved a half point. Both draws turned into wins because of knowledge of those king and pawn endings. I think I attribute those saved half points to that book. Anyway, in the king and pawn endgames book, there's one other book actually, which I also quickly show you, which I'm going to be doing some other videos on because it's quite exciting. Relatively speaking, sort of within the world of chess, it's quite exciting. And that is this one. This is 100 Endgame Studies You Must Know by Jan Timman. two of the positions we're about to look at actually appear in here. In fact, I think the one that's on the screen, the sort of is study one in this book. So two of the studies that we're going to look at are in this book. They're pretty cool positions. Many of you would have seen them before, and they're in this book anyway. But yeah, let's just go through them. Sort of a collection of endgames around Reti's idea. So first thing is pause the video and work out how you're going to save the game as white, or if you've seen this particular very famous puzzle many times, this is Reti composed this in 1921, then just go through the solutions. So the idea is this is good for understanding king geometry if I'm talking about transference of skills, for example, because the distance from there to there and the distance from there to there are the same, and the distance from there to there and from there to there are the same. They are the same distance as a king moves in chess, and that's pretty important. Or in fact, I think this one's relevant, isn't it? Can't remember. But it's dual purpose king moves is what's going on here. So the way that you would draw this is that you would bring your king into g7. It just looks impossible, doesn't it? Because you're too tempy away from catching this pawn, and black's just in time to stop this one. So you think, well, black can just come across here and attack your pawn, and you're still you're still one tempo away from that one. So you do your dual purpose king move. Okay, you're running after this. If black now doesn't push this pawn, then you just go and win it, and it's a draw. So black has to push this pawn, and then you carry on chasing after this pawn. Okay, so let's do that. Let's carry on chasing after this pawn. There you go. The distance from there to there is the same as the distance from there to there. Okay, and black has to carry on pushing that pawn because you're chasing it. And then you change your mind. The distance from there to there is the same as the distance from there to there, because you can't catch that pawn now. So you come in here. Black pushes, you push. You either queen at the same time. There is no sensible way for black to then win your queen with their queen. I mean, they can try a check here on d1, but you would just pop here to e7. Do not pop to e6 and get skewered over here. So black thinks, all right, I'm going to stop him, but you just go here, and now you're actually queening with check, and black possibly has to be a bit, not really, but black might have to be careful. So that's a very famous puzzle, that Reti 1921. So here's the next one. Same guy, Reti, came back 7 years later. It's basically the same puzzle. It took him 7 years to put these 3 extra pawns on the board. So pause the video and decide what you're going to play next here as white to try and save this game. And well done if you found the correct drawing move, which is king g6. Okay, so let's look at what just happens if black comes in and attacks your pawn. In fact, whatever black does, by the way, your next move is to take on g7. So king comes into b6, and we're just going to take this pawn. Okay. If black takes your pawn, king takes f6 is clearly drawn. You're going to win this one. So black has to push one of these 2 pawns. Let's say they push the f pawn. Then you would play king f6. You're going to do the dual purpose king moves idea. If black takes your pawn, then you just take the f pawn. So the only way this really makes sense is for black to push the f pawn, and then you carry on chasing the pawn. Again, I think the only way this really makes sense is for black to push the pawn, and then you change your plan. f2, c7, and all right, you've got a queen each, and black's got this extra rook's pawn, but it's sort of well known that particularly if the pawn's further back, a queen each and a rook's pawn is actually a draw. So they can't do that. So after king g6, what else did we not try? We didn't try pushing the h pawn. Okay, so pushing the h pawn I think is even clearer, because you're just going to do the same trick, but you're going to gobble up this f pawn on the way. So black's not even going to be left with a rook's pawn. So again, you're chasing the pawn, he has to move it. Carry on chasing the pawn. Again, that is a chasing of the pawn because that distance is the same as that distance. And it's the same idea. Okay, so black has to push the pawn and then you change your plan. So I think that was king b6 covered. What if black tries to push one of the pawns straight away? Because, well, for example, if they push the f pawn, king takes f5 would be a blunder because you've then got these two sort of supporting each other, and black would just come in and win your c pawn. So you have to play king takes g7. I think there's a couple of things we should probably investigate here. So pushing that pawn, because we're 2 tempi away, again, ignore this one. Okay, that's not the important thing. You have to have the dual purpose of chasing this pawn, but also coming into, ooh, not like that, coming in to help out this pawn. So we go king f6. If black plays king b6, we're going to get this. And if black plays f3, I think now you'd have to come into one of these two squares, actually. I think king e5 is a problem, isn't it? Because we've got to commit to this pawn. I've forgotten, why is king e5 a problem? I know it is. Let's just see it. If you go king e5 now. Oh yeah, that's it. Black can just play f2, and you can't play c7 because you're not ready to play king d7 to support it. So from this position, black sort of committed to the f pawn now. You'd have to come in king e6, king e7. They're both fine, and then when f2, you have to play c7, and then yeah, king here. Excellent. So that was. Hang on, what were we looking at? We're looking at push the f pawn, king takes g7. I think I looked at everything there. We didn't look at push the h pawn and then king takes g7. And I think it's the same thing as before. Yeah, if we carry on pushing the h pawn, this distance with the dual purpose is going to be the same thing. So we go king f6. If the h pawn gets pushed again, then you go and commit to getting your king to d7. So you play either king e6 or king e7. And if black decides they're going to sort of also try and do two things at once, you carry on doing your two things at once. So you carry on chasing the pawn. This pawn has to move, and then you commit to queening the c pawn. So that was Reti's brilliant composition 7 years after his first brilliant composition. Right, here's the next one. So this was done by Prokes in 9. I'm sure I pronounced that very badly. That's for English phonetics on Prokes. It's like spokes, but with PR at the front instead of SP. It's white to play and save the game. Pause the video and try and work it out. So you look at this one and you think, well, white again needs to find 2 tempi from somewhere. So we're going to have to use the distraction of the possible threat of this pawn promoting to somehow save 2 tempi for the king to go and grab this pawn. Again, noting that any king journey from the back rank to here is the same distance as long as you're moving down a rank. It doesn't matter if you're coming, I don't mean, you couldn't go over there, but it doesn't matter if you're going to end up doing that journey. It's the same distance as that journey there. So that's sort of critical, isn't it? But you think, well, this isn't really going to be as easy, this one, because you play king c8 is the obvious first move, and then black plays king c8, king c6, and you say, well, we're not going to get our 2 tempi here because you play a6, black does this to win the pawn, and then you do this, but we're just 1 move too short. Uh-oh. So how on earth do you do it? And the key is the second move. So king c8, king c6, king b8. And the point is that black can't sort of carry on shouldering you away from the 7th rank. Okay, so you're once again threatening to push the a pawn. Black has to do something about that because otherwise it's going to be a6, a7. If black doesn't defend the a6 square, your next move is a6, and then the next one's a7. But the only way that black can defend the a6 square is to bring the king back. So that's the crucial point. The crucial difference is this a pawn is guarding the b6 square, and that's one of the tempi back. Okay, king b7. We are now one square closer to that pawn. It's weird, isn't it? But king geometry is like, it's really worth understanding. We have now just moved one square towards the catching of that pawn. That is a fact in king geometry. And we're also threatening this. So black's got to do something about it. And there's your extra tempo. So that was pretty brilliant puzzle. Should we connect to a rook? Connect to a rook. Promote to a rook. Where did I get the word connect from? But yeah, I'm not falling for that. I'm going to take your rook. Not sure what I've done if you promoted to a knight. And when you're doing these studies, you know, think, yeah, all right, that's very, very good. You know, we're not going to get a position like that in a game. I sort of half take your point, John, on the transference of skills, dual purpose king moves, understanding king geometry. But is it really going to help me in a game? Well, I don't know. I view it as important or a useful learning. I feel like through studies I've picked up a feel for sort of the power of the pieces, as it were. And here we're looking effectively at the power of a king, and in particular the way a king moves closer from one square to another by taking all sorts of different routes. You know, and it's worth thinking about that, because it is sort of counterintuitive to the way we view distance in life. You know, if I'm looking at a field, the diagonal of the field is actually longer than just going up the width or the length of that field. That's just true. But in chess, for a king, it's not true. Anyway, so this is a game that actually took place between Yates and Marshall in 1929. It is white to move. So just pause the video and just sort of take in the position briefly. I won't sort of set you anything to do. I'll just point out what happened in the game. But just pause. Maybe you could try and work out what happened in the game next. It's like, how is this relevant to what we just did? So pause the video and try and work out how this is relevant. So this position is just completely won for white, obviously. And yeah, I mean, Yates obviously got a bit complacent. One simple way to win it is just go queen d1, and then when black queens, you can take on a4 and then check on the b file, swap the queens, and push the pawn. That's it. So that's a very easy win. But Yates reckoned that he could do the same sort of thing. You know, what he's going to do is he brought his king in to c3, and the idea is that black promotes. You've got your king guarding this pawn quite happily, and this black king that's going to be here is just nowhere near this f pawn. So black promotes, takes, and all of a sudden, I don't know whether white would have realised it here, you've basically got the Proch study. This is a mirror image of that study that we just looked at. Because at this point now, white has to come collect this pawn. Black is threatening a3. If you're not defending the a3 square after your next move, black will play a3, and the next move will be a2, and then a1 equals queen. So white has to play this, but then we've just moved one step towards the catching of that pawn. And we're now threatening a3, so you've got to take the pawn. Draw. So that happened in an actual game. So for anyone who says, oh yeah, studies are a waste of time, they're good fun, but they've got nothing to do with chess, I disagree on at least two levels. One is they happen in games of chess. There's one that happened in a game of chess, and the other one is just sort of the transference of skills. The ideas are useful elsewhere. I mean, you know, why would dual purpose king moves not be a useful thing to understand? Right, this is a fantastic study, this one. This is from 1928 by the Sarychev brothers, I presume. And I reckon my pronunciation is just complete garbage. This is a really cool puzzle. Pause the video, have a long think about it, and how can white save the game? I mean, they're a piece down. We've got this b pawn that's going to run away. We can't queen, of course, because we can't rook, queen, bishop, knight, because the bishop f5 will just pick it up, and then this b pawn runs. So how are you going to save this game? Pause the video and have a think about it. And the astonishing, counterintuitive, brilliant first move here is king c8. What kind of nonsense is that? King c8. It's just a mental first move. If you think about it, we've got to do two things here. One is we want to promote this pawn. I mean, it's ready to promote, so we just got to move the king somewhere, basically, so bishop f5 doesn't pick it up. And the second thing is we've got to catch this pawn. So you think, I know, I'll put my king one further square back in the catching of this pawn, whilst at the same time I'll block the promotion of my pawn. And the reason you want to do it is you've got to get this thing to move, basically. You've got to get it to move, and it now does have to move. Like if you looked at bishop e4 is the only other move. If black loses this pawn, that's it, it's a draw. So if black defends it, then you just play king here. Now you are threatening this, black has to defend it, and then you just take this pawn and it's a draw. So that pawn has to move, and given it has to move, it may as well move to b5. So that's the point. You're making that pawn move. Because in the other lines, the point is the bishop can then, if you sort of did a dual purpose king move where, I don't know, let's say you move the king to d6, because you're thinking, now I'm threatening this, so they have to play bishop f5, and now you can just come around and attack this pawn. I think that king f4 probably wins. I'm just looking down on the hundreds of winning moves. You come and attack this pawn. The point is that black's now got a dual purpose bishop. They can defend this pawn whilst they've blockaded this one. Whereas if you get it to move, which is what we're going to do, and get this pawn to move, when you come back round now and try and attack this pawn, black can't use this bishop to defend it. Like if you imagine, let's say the bishop ends up on e6, simultaneously defending a pawn on b3 while stopping you queening on c8. It doesn't stop you queening on c8 because you just queen on c8 and then take the pawn. That's the idea, is that you're trying to create a situation. Black's trying to give himself enough time to get the king over and help, and of course it's an easy win. But you're trying to stop him from doing that by using the fact that his bishop is going to be overworked defending two things at once, basically. So we're forcing that pawn to move so the bishop can't do two things at once successfully from c8, which it could do from c8. Then we come back to d7. Black thinks, well, actually, I was about to say black thinks it's fine. I've got the bishop f5 skewer going on, so I can just push the b pawn. That would be a big mistake. We're now threatening king e6, and king e6 would stop bishop f5. I don't think. Well, you could play king f4 actually, couldn't you? You could push this, and then play king f4. Astonishingly, even queening here still draws, but a more obvious draw is this. Black has to play this, and then you come and attack the pawn. But anyway, so back in this position here, because you're threatening king b6, maybe a more sensible move for black is this bishop f5. You play king d6, and now they're guarding this. They think, fine, I'll push the pawn. And here's the dual purpose king move again. You need one extra tempo. There it is. You attack the bishop. This bishop's got to move. I don't know, let's go somewhere sensible like d7, king d4, b3, king c3. Defend our pawn. queen. Draw. Really, really cool puzzle. Really enjoyed that one. Right, next one's from a game. This is Lasker versus Tarash from 1914. It's incredible this stuff's over 100 years old, isn't it? It's black to play. Incredibly, there's actually only one winning move here for black. I just presumed there'd be more, but when I stuck it in the computer, there's actually only one. I mean, I saw the one winning move. It's just like, hey, just play this, it's a win. But it's the only winning move, which is interesting. Anyway, black to play. Pause the video and see if you can work out what black should play. So, well done if you decided that bishop e6 check was an easily winning move, which it is. King to g6 or king f8, I don't think it makes much difference because we're taking on g7, taking on b3, h1 gets pushed, bishop d1. I mean, we can just sort of earmark that bishop for the taking of this pawn, and there's no way this bishop's going to stop these three against this one with the black king in there. So this is just easily winning for black. But what Tarash played, the fool, is bishop takes g7. And it just looks sort of similar, doesn't it? It's a fine swapping off of bishops. You've still got the problem that, you know, we can earmark one of our bishops for this pawn. And these three over here are just going to easily get a queen, aren't they, against these two somehow. And when black takes back, apparently black's best try here is this. Engine still reckons that's drawn. Dvoretsky reckons that's very difficult for a human to draw as white. So it is drawn, but that was black's best chance, bishop h6. But if we take on f5, take on g7, push the a pawn, for example, then it's the same idea as the Proke study again. We're now threatening h5, so black's got to come and do something about that. But as soon as they do, we play king g6, and now we're still threatening h5. King takes, and the white king's in. And if anything, black had to be a bit careful. They didn't end up losing this. Draw. So again, that's like from a game. Wasn't a study, but uses the exact same idea as the Proke study, or even if you like Reti's original dual-purpose king move study. Next one's also a study. This one's from 1928. I really enjoyed this one. I did get it. It took me a long time to get. It was driving me. But the only reason I persisted with it was because I knew there was a solution, because it was a study. If I had this in a game as white, I probably would have had a clear conscience in resigning, and then got home and been very upset to find out that it's possible to draw it. So pause the video and work out how on earth whites can draw this. So yeah, it just looks like you're in big trouble here. Again, we've got to find two tempi from somewhere to catch that pawn. I say two tempi, you might think it's only one extra, because if we move towards the pawn now, push it, we're actually sort of in time. But our first move would have to be that way, because obviously we can't go to g6. So we're going to have to try and use these pawns somehow to distract that king enough to gain the extra tempi we need to come and collect this pawn. So you might have been tempted by h4, which doesn't do it, I'm afraid, because after c5, you haven't really got anything sensible other than g4 check. But now black wins with king takes h4, and you can't save the g pawn. Okay, so black really can operate sort of two separate. You can compartmentalize what's going on. This pawn's running away before being chased by this king. That's just one compartment, and the other compartment is I'm winning this pawn. And sort of, can you do a dual-purpose king move to combine the compartments, if you like? No, because there's your dual-purpose king move. You're one move closer to defending this pawn, and you've moved towards getting this one. But sadly, king takes g4. So it's that sort of idea, but it just doesn't work with h4. So the first move is g4 check, and I say almost trivially, if black takes that, you play king g6, c5. What's the problem? I'm facing you off. There's your problem, mate. I'm going to push this h pawn. You've now got to take it, and the white king's in time to catch that pawn. Okay. So when I first did this puzzle, I sort of got all of that quite easily. But the thing that took me ages is like, well, and what happens if black just plays that? Because remember, h4 check, king takes h4, and yeah, I mean you're just not getting anywhere there. King takes h4. We've got the same problem if king g6. I'm going to take that. That's losing. I think white's one move further ahead than where I was before, but we can just come over with the king, basically, and now you can't even do this. So this is happening next move, and black's just won that. So it's the second move that's difficult, and if you're studying these positions as I like to do without moving the pieces, it's even harder to think about that second move back here. So I'm thinking g4 check, king g5. What on earth's the second move? Because h4 check, king takes h4, black wins. And the second move, the sort of the incredible thing, is this king g7 move. It just seems like such a strange move to play, because we're in a position where we're trying to gain tempi. Like, time is so important. We just desperately need tempi from somewhere. And we've just played a move where we've just got no further to the catching of that pawn. It's bizarre. But the point is that what you're trying to do is engineer a situation where if you remember, if we push the h pawn, king takes h4, king g6, then it's not a dual purpose king move, because king takes and we can't carry on chasing the pawn. But if the king's on this diagonal, you can carry on chasing the pawn. That's the point. So the second move is king g7. Black pushes the pawn, h4 check. If king takes g4, then that would have been no problem before, by the way, in the other position. This time we can play king g6, and black's got to deal with this. We've already seen this position, haven't we? So black's best tries to play king takes h4, but now you can play king f6, and you're threatening this, which black's got to deal with. Which haven't got to deal with it, but it is a draw if they don't deal with it, because you're both queen. So black takes, and you're just in time. So that was the solution to that one. It's g4 check, and then after king g5, the incredible king g7. So incredibly well done if you got that. I did get that, but it took me a long time of thinking about it. And the last one, pause the video and see if you can work out how on earth you'd go about winning this one. There are lots of layers to this, so sort of feel free to move the pieces around. It's one of those, like a lot of good studies, like if you're like, oh, I've got it, you just do that and that's it. And it's like, well, actually, there's a lot more to it than that. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it once you see the various layers. But for now, just pause the video and see if you can work out how to white to play and win, basically. So this one was Grigoriev from 1937, and when we did went through the Book of Jesus basically 2 years ago, the endgame studies, lots of those bonkers knight endgames came from were made up by Grigoriev, when knights are trying to chase pawns, and the first move is to move your knight away from the pawn, so all those sorts of strange things. Anyway, this one's pretty cool. It kind of combines a second idea rather than just dual purpose king moves, and that's the idea of, I mean, both sides have got pawns, one file, one with one file separating them, and the idea with these two pawns is that the king can contain them, but it can't round them up. If there are two files separating, it can contain them and round them up. And if there are three, it can contain them without rounding them up. But in all the cases, if the pawns reach the square of the back rank they promote without the help of the king. So that's sort of a different concept to this dual purpose king moves, which was one of the things that we covered. I think last summer actually we covered that one, maybe the summer before, I can't remember. But anyway, we've covered all of that. But the point is that h3 is the sort of the obvious first move, because now these pawns protect themselves, that they're fine by themselves against this king. And you think, well, black's got the same thing going on. Black's got these two pawns. But the thing is, this one's a bit too far back. So black pushes it, and then we'll go king b1, c4. Black's desperately trying to get this situation going on over here. And we're going to come to a2, and obviously we're going to take this pawn if black doesn't do something. So black pushes the pawn, and now this king can round up these two pawns, whereas this king can't, because this one's already sort of ready to go. But the true, hopefully you got this far in, like, how does white win this position? But if at this point you now decided that, well, okay, I'll take on a3, you've just thrown away the win, because now black can use the Reti idea, the whole theme of this video. They can play king g3, and the f pawn's got to run, because if you don't push the f pawn, black's easily just going to take that and gobble up this one afterwards. Doesn't even need to gobble up that one, they could just sort of do the usual backwards and forwards over there. So you've got to push the f pawn, and then we come and attack it again. Okay, so we're threatening to attack the pawn. We've moved one square towards catching that pawn, but we've also moved one square towards defending this one, basically. f6, and now we give up on catching that pawn and come in here. And that's going to be a draw. Notice, actually, if white didn't play king b3, they might think they're being clever, because they can queen and then come and skewer your king and queen to pick up this queen on c1 when you queen at the same time. Sadly for them, they can't do that because you're queening with check. That's actually pretty important. So there, that's now just a draw, the Reti idea that we've already seen. So the brilliance of the study, which you had to spot back here, well done if you did, the winning move is king b3. And the difference this time, remember, these two pawns, they're just, if you sort of compartmentalize it, just try and treat different parts of the chessboard as just different things going on, they're looking after themselves. So if black doesn't do something about this situation over here, our next move is going to be just to take this pawn. Okay, that one's then fine, and these are just going to look after themselves, and then the king can come over and we'll win the game. So black's only try really is a2. And the crucial difference is that when the king takes on a2, well, one of the crucial differences is, remember a minute ago we couldn't do that skewer idea because we're queening with check. We're no longer queening with check, so the skewer idea is back on the table. So black tries to do the Reti idea, where they're going to do the dual purpose king moves. And now king f4 is immediately losing because of the skewer idea. We can just push, king there, f7, c2, f8 equals queen. I mean, black could mess about a bit, couldn't they, by knighting instead of queening, but any non-knight promotion, we're having it, and we've won the game. So that was interesting. So in this position, they might just say, okay, I can't play king f4 because of the skewer idea. Let's just go for it. Let's just go and get this pawn over here. And white has only one winning move here. There's only one winning move. You think, oh, it's over now. I can do whatever I want. I can play f6. You can't play f6. King e2. We're in time to help this pawn promote. We're going to have a queen each. Queen each with this rook's pawn back here, remember, is a draw. I mean, you still got to draw it over the table, but it is a draw. So you can't play f6. You think, all right, well, I'll come and win this pawn. That's also a blunder, throws away the win, because now black goes back to the Reti idea with this dual purpose king move. I'm one move closer to catching this pawn, and if when you move it, I'm going to do that. That's a draw. So the only winning move from this position, which was absolutely crucial, is king b1. And now, I mean, you hopefully could see that move anyway. It's sort of once you've seen that move, it's just like, back here, it's just like once king b1's on your radar, it's like king b1. Oh yeah, I go to c1, and this pawn's ahead of this king. It's kind of, there's no way for black to combine the two compartments. They're just two compartments going on the chessboard. This king is stopping this pawn, and nothing to do with that. This pawn is queening. It can't be caught by that king. So king b1 is the answer. How about that? So this was back in this position. h3, I'd say, is a fairly obvious first move. Come and collect this a pawn, and then the true genius, king b3. How about that? Black's only tries a2. Then they're going to try and do the Reti idea. They don't do king f4 because of the skewer. They try king f3. And now your only winning move is king b1. Anyway, that was, what's that now, about, it's just gone over 40 minutes on dual purpose king moves. Dvoretsky calls it the Reti idea. I hope people liked that. I'm hoping also I've twisted a few arms, that studies are not just sort of a bit of fun that have got nothing to do with chess. One, you can get them in actual games, and two, I think there's a skills transference thing going on, and I'm sure there's a 3 and a 4. There's probably lots of other reasons why studies are good for you, and they are fun. That last one I thought was particularly good fun. In this Timon book, this 100 endgame studies you must know. I mean, obviously there's 100 endgame studies in it. This is a really good book, and when you get to the last 20, they are absolutely crackers. It's just I think my argument of the skills transference starts to look extremely shaky when you get to the later ones in this book. But regardless of where you stand on are studies a useful thing in chess, this book is great fun. I recommend it. Anyway, hope everyone enjoyed that.